Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Oscars of Marketing and the launch of the 2024 Kantar BrandZ Most Valuable South African Brands. Please put your hands together. Yes, thank you, thank you. Now, for those who don't know me, I go by the name of Norris, and that's Chakalaka Norris, the most spiciest man in South Africa. Yes, I said what I said. I said I am the most spiciest man in South Africa. So I'll wait until you give me the cheers and applause, as I do look fabulous for you guys. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. So gather around as I have wisdom to drop like it's hot. But first, allow me to say a big howser to all you marketing maestros for putting the word lekker back into local. You guys literally have turned brands into a braai talk and braai into a masterclass of brand sizzle. So good out to you guys. Give yourselves a huge round of applause for that. And as I was saying, a huge shout out to all the top 30 brands who have literally mastered the game by being so coordinated more than the Springboks. So again, please give yourselves a huge round of applause. And please do not tell them that I said that. Also, again, like I said, a huge round of applause for the top 30 brands who have outperformed the Vuvuzela at the World Cup when it comes to making a noise in the market and putting our brands on a global map. So once again, please give yourselves a huge round of applause. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're wondering why I'm your MC tonight or this morning, don't worry. All will be revealed soon. However, it may or may not have something to do with my favorite brands. Speaking of favorite brands, does anybody in the house know what those brands are? Going once, going twice? Yes. Savannah, oh, ladies and gentlemen, please give that beautiful lady a huge round of applause. Unfortunately, ma'am, it was not up for prizes, so that's all you get for getting that answer correctly. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, hold on to your seats, hold on to your popcorns, keep those cool drinks close to you, and make sure you hold on to your weave if it's not glued properly, as things are about to get spicy up in here. With no further ado, allow me to introduce the CEO of Kantar South Africa, Umalum Cool. Umalum Obey, by the way. The man that I called Ivan Moroke.
You know, you are the only person who calls me Ivan. Normally, it's people in the north, in the east or west of the continent who call me Ivan. And what do I call you? Mr. Norris? Chakalaka? Chaklas? Chaka? Whatever. Anyway, welcome. It is fantastic to see all of you guys. You know, I was just thinking how fantastic it is that we are holding this now. I can give you a hearty, warm Josie, welcome. If it was 2 weeks ago, you remember how it was, right? We were really freezing. So I'm quite excited that you are doing it today. Now, here's something to keep in mind. When Chakalaka Norris walks into a room, Savannah instantly chill. Okay, let me put it this way, right, guys? That their jokes were not my idea. They were absolutely not my idea. They are in the script. They've got nothing to do with me. Okay, moving right along. As you see, the vibe is Oscars, right? And talking about the Oscar vibe, do you really know that it is more difficult to be on the top 30 most valuable brands than to win an Oscar? For real. Fact. So those guys who will be here in the top 30, who you'll be seeing, is much respect to them, because the rigor that goes in terms of making the ranking is quite phenomenal. If you don't trust me, I'm going to play you a video so that you can get a taste of what it entails.
Since 2006, Kantar BrandZ has been quantifying the value of the world's most powerful brands. A brand is one of a company's most valuable assets. Our data shows that, on average, brands account for close to 1/3 of a company's value. For the highest performing brands, it can be more than 50%. Brand value depends on consumer perceptions, as well as a company's ability to translate that equity into shareholder value. So, Kantar BrandZ consistently puts what consumers think about the brand at the center of its valuation. Our brand valuation methodology is a three-step process using the brand's financial value and brand contribution to determine the brand value. We start with the earnings reported by the brand's owner, the company. We strip away the earnings generated by its tangible assets, like buildings, to isolate the earnings generated solely by intangible assets. For example, software licenses, patents, and the brand. We then filter out all the intangible earnings that can't be directly attributed to the brand itself, leaving the branded intangible earnings. Finally, we're most interested in the brand's future prospects. Brand multiple measures the brand's ability to generate earnings in the future as a multiple of its current earnings. It's similar to the calculation used by financial analysts to determine the market value of stocks. This delivers the intangible value created by the branded business, its financial value. To determine the role of brand contribution, the value driven by brand perceptions, the next step is to peel away a few more layers to assess the brand's ability to attract more consumers or to charge more for it. We use Kantar's unique survey-based brand equity model, which measures how meaningful, different, and salient a brand is. These tell us the brand's influence on consumer behavior to grow demand and penetration. And it further quantifies pricing power, the brand's ability to charge more and deliver higher margins. These together connect brand equity to value creation, where the deepest value of Kantar BrandZ's unique brand measurement lies. We know what motivates consumers and marketing's critical growth accelerators. Kantar BrandZ tells us how a brand is driving value for its business and how strong its future prospects are. Let us arm you with tangible evidence of the value delivered by your company's greatest asset.
I think you get the gist, right? It is a big deal, and I trust the people who put this together. Half of the time when you speak to them, you've got no clue what they're saying, and your brain has because they are so smart, but it's for real, right? Now, I'm not sure if all of you know that the Kantar BrandZ measures the ranking in the 100 most valuable brands across the world every year. But what is cool is we, as South Africa, we are one of the countries that is allowed to have their local ranking, right? I think that's enough to blow our own vuvuzela in terms of that, right? Little old SA doing that. So, but there are some distinguishing facts that to qualify for the ranking, there are three things that are non-negotiable. Firstly, you must be born and bred in SA, completely. And then the second thing is your financials must be available for analysis, whether you're a private company or you are listed on the GSE. And lastly, is what I can loosely call a purchase brand. So we review what the consumer purchases, not like the holding company, but the brands that they do. Those are the three. And as you saw in the video, I think what makes BrandZ so unique, there are a lot of valuations out there, but most of them, they focus on the financial side of it. But I think what makes it so unique is we combine the other part that all of us in this room, we know how important it is about client demand. It's about the perception of brands. This is what excites us, right? Sometimes we might not have a direct influence on the financial part, but what we do have a direct influence on is exactly in terms of the consumer demand. So, what are the key headlines that I can share with you in terms, before we go into more details of the 2024 ranking? And as you can see as well, I think there are lots of data points that we use. I mean, we have over 45,000, consumers that we talk to. We have over 800 brands that we evaluate and over 56 categories. So it's quite tough. And that's why when you've got it, it's amazing. From number 30 to number 1. Now, here are some of the big headlines in 2024. Overall, in 2024, the overall brand value has declined. I mean, it's just over 30 billion USD. But it has declined. It's about 6%, a bit lower than it was last year. But like typical South Africans, we always look at the brighter side of life. If you look at last year, it declined by 9%. So we are going, the trend is going right. And I think the context, you see it when you look at it over time. But guys, I think we must pat ourselves on the back. You know, sometimes when I speak to my global colleagues, it's like people do not understand how difficult it is to do business or to run brands in this market, guys. So we really should be patting ourselves on the back. That 6% is not bad at all, even if it's a decline. But if you consider load shedding, right? We all now know about load shedding, its impact socially, its impact economically. And then we had to deal with an economy that was flat or that was going down. And then we had to deal at the time when the evaluation was being done with issues like uncertainty of political uncertainty. And you know business doesn't like political uncertainty. So there were lots and lots of things that the headwinds that we have to deal with this country. But they don't know what we know, right? They don't know what we know. We are made of a tougher thing. We are resilient. One thing that gets to be associated with SA, but I always warn that as much as we must celebrate the resilience, it is not sustainable. Okay? So, taking even a broader perspective, looking across the seas, okay, let me try this one. Why did the chicken go across the street? Okay, to get an autograph of Chuck's. Guys, come on, you are killing me here. Right, let's move on. No, having a bit of a broader context, if you compare with all the other countries, you can see below us where their value has gone down. There are some serious markets in there like Canada, Saudi, and UK, where it has been a bit low. And I must admit, though, that when you look at the European markets, about a year or two ago, they themselves were on a decline, and they said now it's bounced back. So we are pushing way above our weight. And it reminds you as well about how the grass is not always greener on the other side, right? Think about it. Everybody's battling with inflation, right? We think it's only us, but you know how everybody's battling with inflation. You've got two wars that are happening that are closer to some other markets. And talk about political uncertainty. Do you want to talk about political uncertainty? The nonsense that is happening across the world in terms of political uncertainty, it makes us look like a picnic, right? We don't have to deal with, it's all fake news, folks. We don't have to deal with that, right? There are people who have got to deal with that, yeah? So we are in good company. Now, enough of me. I think you are all thinking about, okay, when are we getting to those awards? And all I can tell you is the big moment is here. We are about to release the 30 most valuable brands in SA. And as I said, from 30, guys, give respect, from 30 to 1. It's a big deal. And when you see your name being mentioned here, we'll be handing out the awards at the end. What I'm saying is when you see your name, I know it's going to be tough. Hang on to your chair. Don't come all running at the same time. We're going to get a moment, guys. At the very end, we'll take the picks and hand it out. So for now, relax, enjoy your popcorn, and enjoy the top 30 most valuable brands. And here it is, folks. Here we are. And the first is to congratulate. If I can know how. See, that's the thing with age, right? And people think when you do this, they think you are taking a selfie. There's no confusion about it, and you have to read things like this. Anyway, a huge congratulations to FNB for second in the running for helping themselves, if you know. For helping themselves to the number one position, fantastic. And I think FNB, I think we all know in terms of the source of FNB, that innovative approach, which is well celebrated and well awarded, and their going footprint has really earned them the right to be there. But there's also an excitement that we have two brands which are part of the landscape of SA at a braai, at a Shisanyama, at a club or whatever. Savannah and Hunters are the new entrants in top 30, which is absolutely fantastic, right? And I think even the issue of them with the cash injection and ownership of Heineken has really added to that. But over and above the financial masses is their brand contribution. They've always been strong brands. Now I think you know why we have Norris, Chaklas, or whatever we call you. That's why we have him as a guest of honor, because this was such a momentous occasion that we think that we are celebrating them. You saw that we have a 6% that we went down in terms of the value. But even in that, there's been about 12 brands that have grown up. Have gone up in terms of value. And they include things like Investec, Assurance, Sadlam, Brutal, Fruits, and Flying Fish, and the rest. So what it means is that 6% could have been worse. So even amongst the craziness and all this stuff, we do our best and we still represent, which is fantastic. In closing, I thought it would be interesting to see, when you look at the top 30, which are the dominant categories. As you can see, banking continues being quite strong with FNB leading the way. And then you see is followed by telcos, and with Vodacom leading the way there, which is great. And then you have alcohol. Castle continue being the legend. You've got the icon of Savannah, and you've got the legend of Castle continue being number one. Retail with Woolworths, Discovery in insurance, and Nando's absolutely in fast food, and DSTV in media, and Sasol and Life in the hospital. So that's what makes it. And I was trying to make a story of banking, telcos, and alcohol about this country. It just did not fit. Tried as much as I tried, it just did not fit. There must be a story. So all you copywriters out there, before we leave, if you can tell me what makes SA being about banking and about alcohol and about telcos. Okay, cool. Now I'm going to hand over to Graham. Somebody has, yeah? Okay, there we go. That's a start. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Graham, who will be talking about arguably the most incredible dynamic how-to guide in brand build you can ever find. Graham will be talking about blueprint for brand growth. Okay.
Thanks very much, Ivan, and it's amazing to be here again with you all in South Africa. A whole year has gone by, governments have come and gone, and we've got some truly important new news for you too. In fact, it's probably the biggest idea that Kantar has brought to you in the last 10 years. It's about brand growth. It's come about because there are many commentators in the world of marketing, some great marketing practitioners, some smart academics, and frankly, just some people trying to sell you on the latest shiny thing. But none of them has the collective depth of experience and breadth of data that Kantar has. We just haven't really put it all together in one simple way to help you. But now we have. It's driven by data, it's informed by experience, and it's designed for marketers. Yeah. This is Kantar's blueprint for brand growth. It has 4 key drivers and accelerators which help brands grow. And when we say grow, we mean in terms of penetration, of market share, of revenue and value share, and of all the important business metrics, growth in profits and brand value that ultimately drive the share price and value of your company. That's what CEOs want to see from marketers: profitable, long-term growth. And that's what brands using the blueprint can deliver. So let's start with the foundation and primary growth driver. Brands grow by being meaningfully different to more people. Growth starts with more people being attracted to your brand. To drive penetration, you need to shape how meaningfully different your brand is, identifying stronger, functional, and emotive meaningful connections, and defining strategic opportunities to build difference. But the key proof point here is that if you have strong, meaningful difference, 5 times as many people will buy you in a given time period compared to those brands that are not meaningfully different. And even more importantly, we've found it gives you a better chance of significant future penetration growth. So, to drive penetration, people's attitudes towards your brand matter. First, you need to know the people you want to attract. Then, you need to be meaningful to more people you've identified, and to do that, a brand should be designed to meet the needs that matter. Now, this could embrace a range of consumer needs: the physical, the emotional, functional needs, social needs, and other ways that brands fit into and work and add value to consumers' lives. Difference doesn't have to be the result of actual product superiority. Now, that's very difficult to sustain and hard to create in the first place. On the other hand, distinctive assets alone are not enough to create difference. So we've got Mark Ritson coming along later to tell you more about difference. So how have South African brands grown over the last year? Well, most of the top 30 brands are high on being meaningful and high on being different, as we'd hoped to see. And this is similar pattern to the most valuable global brands in many other countries. Only a couple have achieved success just through the scale of their category alone. However, we do also see a significant proportion of them may be vulnerable to disruption as they lack difference relative to their competitors. So these are the brands with the strongest equity in the minds of South African consumers. And they have built these mental connections over many years of consistent activity. That means consistent product and service quality being delivered, consistent communications that stick in the minds of consumers, and a consistent brand experience that lives on after purchase. And these strong brands are helping to lift the average meaningful difference of South African brands ahead of much of the rest of the world. They're more meaningful than the most valuable brands in Europe, Japan, Mexico, Brazil, and Canada. And they're more different than all of them, and Australia too. But it hasn't always been that way. There has been a huge improvement in those perceptions of difference over the past few years across the top 30 brands here. And that's crucial as a development, as it leaves South African brands in a stronger position to find growth and to be resilient in difficult economic conditions. But the best among them is Clicks. So congratulations to Clicks on receiving the Kantar BrandZ Award for the most meaningfully different South African brand in 2024. We can help all of you use the blueprint using our starting grids. There's a starting grid for this foundational growth driver and one for each of the 3 growth accelerators. These starting grids are your evidence-based strategic framework, and they use data from Kantar's Meaningful, Different and Salient Brand Equity Framework, and that's been at the heart of BrandZ since 2014. For the growth driver, we can map a brand's meaningfulness against its difference. And each quarter of the chart has its own implications. So, for example, brands that are meaningful but lack difference need to find ways to stand apart. It's likely that today they're successful in meeting broad category needs, but stronger predisposition can be built by cultivating perceived relative difference on the things that matter. As we've already seen, Clicks sits in the top right quadrant of the grid. In 2024, Clicks experienced growth amidst a decline in value within its category. The business grew its revenues through strengthened margins and effective management. Clicks scores the highest on our experience index in BrandZ among the most valuable South African brands, and it's maintained this position since 2019. The brand's well known within its category. It inspires trust amongst consumers. That's gone up 7 points, and it's perceived to be worth more than it charges, and that's up 11 points from last year. It has consistently built its meaningfulness over time. So Clicks has great meaningful difference, but as we've seen, there are a few South African brands, even ones in the top 30, that lack a perceived difference against their competitive set. Now, that's not the only thing for brand marketers to worry about. It can be a significant advantage to a business that they're missing out on. It can affect pricing power, margins, and ultimately shareholder returns. So let's turn to marketing guru Mark Ritson to hear his take on why difference needs to return to a stronger position in the minds and strategic planning of brand marketers.
Yes, indeed. Hello, marketers. How are you? Great pleasure to be here. My job is to talk a little bit about differentiation and some of the major changes I see, and I think Kantar sees going on in the marketing space. And it's a story, I think, that's told over 3 different chapters. So let me take you through those 3 chapters. And then, of course, we'll have a little Q&A. If you've got any questions, you can enter them. And right at the end of the session, I'll do the weekend weather forecast as well. So let's start by the first chapter, which is really in the beginning. And we're going to go back more than 50 years to the origins of differentiation. And if you go back far enough, it really is at the center of almost everything. And we've got to go back to this handsome gentleman here, Rossa Reeves, and the idea of the USP, or the unique selling proposition. According to Reeves, it was a proposition that must be one that the competition either cannot or does not offer. Therefore, it must be unique, either uniqueness of the brand or a claim not otherwise made in that particular field. So right from the beginning, differentiation was about finding that unique thing. And when Professor Michael Porter got involved, it continued to be that quest for uniqueness. Porter had different strategies that you could play, and one of them was the differentiation strategy, in which, as he says, a firm seeks to be unique in its industry along some dimensions that are widely valued by buyers. It is rewarded for its uniqueness with a premium price. And that search for uniqueness continued all the way through into the 80s in the work of Al Ries, famously Ries and Trout. And Ries had pretty much the same message as the predecessors. Each product, depending on the category, has a set of different attributes. Your product becomes unique if it's known by one of these attributes. Owning such an attribute will allow you to successfully highlight your product at service. But note, you cannot own the same attribute or position as your competitor. So again, a slightly weaker message, but still about achieving uniqueness through the ownership of an attribute. And the analogy I would use is, it's kind of like that great moment in Pulp Fiction where Travolta opens the box to discover the magical, unique thing at the heart of whatever it is. We never get to find out what it is, but it's the center of everything, and it's incredibly special. And that for me is the closest analogy I can find to this quest for uniqueness that drove differentiation and very much drove marketing. Because every great marketing professor of that era basically said, as you can see here, Ted Levitt, my hero, saying if marketing is about anything, it's about differentiating. Phil Kotler, the same message. Differentiation is the cornerstone of successful marketing. So you see how this plays out. Uniqueness drives differentiation, and differentiation was and is the whole point of marketing. And it reaches its zenith with Jack Trout's work, differentiate or die. Yeah, literally die. This is how aroused we became at the thought of differentiation and achieving this fabled golden uniqueness. So let's move to chapter 2, because at some point there was a change. There was a realization that maybe this was all a load of old bollocks. And I say that with all respect to Professor Michael Porter and all those that followed him. I think they might have got it wrong. So what happened to many marketers like me, a whole generation, I think, is we went off on a chase to find these unique things that would give us differentiation and therefore make our marketing successful. And as we started to examine and scrutinize more and more data on brand perceptions from the market, we found there were 2 or 3 things that were clearly missing. So the first thing that happens when you look at a decent set of quantitative perceptual data from the market is you realize there is masses of non-variant data. And what I mean by that is it's not as if some brands stand for this and some brands stand for that. When you look at this data, the market tends to move in a wildebeest fashion across the brands in pretty much the same direction. The other thing that was missing were any of these unique associations. As you look through the data, what becomes apparent is no brand, no matter how successful they may be, has access to this magical, fabled, golden, unique stuff that apparently Porter and everyone else was telling us we had to find. And finally, even that stuff at the end that Al Rees is talking about, even if it wasn't unique, we couldn't even own an attribute. Brands don't own these associations. It's not as if on one of these particular words, on a 7-point Likert scale, our brand is 6.5 on average, and all the other brands are 2.8. You literally never see that. Ownership of attributes might sound good in Al Rees's book, but it doesn't bloody happen when you actually look at the data. And so we entered a new chapter. A chapter driven by Professor Byron Sharp and by Ehrenberg Bass. And it's a chapter that's literally 10 years old, given the book came out almost exactly a decade ago. And one of Sharp's many famous quotes, rather than striving for meaningful, perceived differentiation, the very things we've just learned about from Kantar, marketers should instead seek meaningless distinctiveness. Yeah, meaningless distinctiveness. And if you delve into the pages of the Great Red Book, easily the most influential book of the last 30 years in marketing, what you discover is very clearly a treatise to do exactly that. You'll see tables like this that suggest that positioning is the old or past worldview and salience is now replacing it. The differentiation, again, is in the past and distinctiveness replaces it. My criticism of Ehrenberg Bass is matched by my respect and admiration for them because, can you believe it, I can hold 2 contradictory thoughts in my head at the same time. I love what Ehrenberg Bass has done to our industry, but they go too far, in my professional opinion. There's a little touch of dogma in their science. There's a little bit too much sizzle in the steak of their effectiveness work. They go 20 or 30% too far, as evidenced here, right? Rather, so they're setting up some kind of battle between distinctiveness replacing differentiation as if it's a choice, and portraying positioning as a past worldview to be replaced by the new Ehrenberg Bass approach. I think that's a ridiculous division, as you'll see, even though I really love the addition of distinctiveness to our marketing toolkit. And the results, because of the influence of Ehrenberg Bass and the Great Red Book and everything else over the last decade, have resulted in many marketers falling for the dogma and saying basically differentiation doesn't exist. It's an old world view. It's now all about distinctiveness. If you know anything about the marketing literature, you see idiot articles like this all the time. Be distinctive, not different. Differentiation versus distinctiveness, as if they are somehow competing ideas. Distinctiveness is the new differentiation, or distinctiveness beats differentiation. Yeah, on the back of the head with a big metal bar. It's nonsensical, juvenile, stupid stuff. What is therefore the Ehrenberg-Bass case against differentiation? Now let me be careful, because I do not want to paraphrase incorrectly any of the amazing work out of the Institute. So let me list direct from the book the 5 critiques of differentiation that have spurned this rejection of differentiation. Well, the first one, which is rather strange, is brands don't attract wildly different consumers. That's an odd one, in my opinion. Yeah, why would we look at targeting as proof against differentiation? It's kind of like saying the reason England won't win the Cricket World Cup is because Marcus Rashford isn't scoring any goals right now. That one just doesn't make sense to me, right? The second one, brands don't possess unique associations. As you'll see in a moment, I agree. I think the chase for uniqueness is a mistake that not only Ehrenberg-Bass has made, but even the great Michael Porter has made. And very humbly, I'd like to suggest that everybody got that one wrong. And uniqueness is at the core of our problem and our issues over the last 10 years. Brands aren't perceived as being different to competitors anymore. And again, you'll find that Ehrenberg-Bass provides some data in the book, How Brands Grow, to illustrate that point, looking at which customers really perceive the brand to be different or really perceive it to be unique. Now, the first point is there are categories, spirits, supermarkets, etc., where almost half the market does think that a certain brand is different from the others. And that's a very strange way to disprove differentiation. One of my points is not all brands are different. It isn't something that you just get automatically. I think a small proportion have achieved it. And therefore, this data doesn't exactly disprove it. I would also suggest, and it's a broader point, asking, do you think this brand is different, is probably not the strongest measure of differentiation. A stronger measure might be to look at the brand perceptions and see if those perceptions are specifically different from other brands. And here we reach the weak point in Ehrenberg-Bass data. My goodness, they've got amazing data on many things, but they sure as shit haven't got great data on the absence of differentiation. This is the main source of evidence to disprove differentiation. A table from 20 years ago that compares non-competitive brands, some other unknown brands, on very generic values. So here we have the perceptions of FedEx, Nokia, and Oracle, and 3-4 other mysterious brands measured on these relatively generic attributes. Now, once again, you'll notice that some of these brands are actually very different, right? That one brand, Oracle, is twice as different in proportionate terms to mystery brand B. Again, that looks like difference to me. But the key point here is these variables may not be what these brands are positioning on, right? They seem awfully generic. So I spent a bit of time and I looked back to 2002 to try and find if any of these brands, I could find out what their positioning was. The only one I could find was a document from Nokia from 2002 with its brand values. You'll note that for the most part, Nokia isn't worried about these variables here, so why would it be different upon them? It should be generic, but there is one exception. If you look down there, passion for innovation is indeed one of the values at the time that Nokia was positioning on. And what do you know? Oh, look, it's quite relatively different from the other brands. So brands aren't perceived as being different to competitors. I think that all comes down to which attributes we measure and how we measure them. 2 other points from Ehrenberg-Bass. Purchase drives perceived differences. This is a big point Professor Sharp often makes. Decades of research, he says, have documented how attitudinal perceptions strongly reflect the past buying of the respondents. So simply our market share. Of course, attitudes also affect buying, but the effect turns out to be weaker than we used to think it was, while the effect of buying on brand attitudes is very strong. So you see what Sharp's point here is. He's arguing reverse causality. Now, we can quote some work here from another marketing scientist, the wonderful Professor Cohen Pauls, who's got wonderful longitudinal data soon to be published in a large marketing journal. And sure enough, he finds in a survey of 153 brands, 30 examples where Sharp is absolutely right. Buying it then drives attitudinal change. So Professor Sharp is not incorrect, but he is incorrect because also Pauls is able to record 35 examples where attitudinal perception precedes purchase, and another 11 examples where the two drive each other. It is not correct to say, for the most part, purchase drives attitude. It is more correct to say sometimes attitude drives purchase and sometimes they drive each other. The point is we're dismissing the role of brand perceptions too easily, too openly, and perceived differences can and do drive purchase. Another point that Ehrenberg Bass make, differentiation does not affect price sensitivity. The claim is, if brands really did vary in their degree of differentiation, we might see them exhibit different price elasticity as customers of more differentiated brands would be less sensitive to price. However, price elasticity seems to vary more with the context of the price change. That's simply not true. And we can thank Kantar here for the data to prove it. Salience has relatively little impact on pricing power, according to Kantar data. But what do you know? Difference, and especially meaningful difference, drives enormous amounts of pricing power. And that makes sense if you think about it. Let's talk about something that Ehrenberg Bass rarely talk about, which is price premium, price sensitivity, pricing. If I offer you a bag of sugar for $100 and someone turns up and offers you another bag of sugar for $80, you're going to take the $80 bag of sugar because there's no difference between the two bags. But if I have differentiated brands, like an iPhone, for example, costing $900, and I offer you a much less impressive, less different alternative phone for $220, you're going to take the iPhone. Perceived difference is a driver of growth, but it's a particular driver of pricing sensitivity because it takes us away from commodification, generating the potential for price premium. Ehrenberg Bass' final criticism, differentiation does not lead to brand growth. It does. They claim, in spite of nearly every textbook telling marketers to strive for differentiation, real-world competition is about competitive matching rather than avoiding competitors by delivering differences. Furthermore, textbooks offer no evidence that differentiation leads to brand growth. Well, maybe the textbooks don't, but Kantar has it. What it shows is, again, salience, distinctiveness is a big driver of demand power, but so too is difference and meaningful difference. They can all be factors in this. And again, we can celebrate salience as being a big driver while not necessarily eliminating difference, because you know what, again, you could have two competing ideas in your head at the same time if you're relatively smart. Think about what we've been saying for 10 years. Simple face validity tells you that when someone looks at a Dell laptop versus an Apple laptop, they are not going to perceive those two things to be the same. To make that point is bananas. It's more than just salience, clearly. So we're entering a third age of differentiation, in my opinion, partly thanks to Kantar, who've done a really good job of continuing to make the point. And I think we're in an era now of bothism. So what I'm going to do is move to the middle of my slide with the assistance of my beautiful, thank you, and invisible assistant. Let's talk about these two terms and how you as a marketer can harness both. Because I love distinctiveness. I love the work of Ehrenberg Bass. I just don't see why we have to lose differentiation because of it. I'm a bothist deep down. So let's first make the very important point that these two things are very much not the same thing. A lot of people will tell you they're the same. Again, if we look at wonderful Kantar data, what we will see is over thousands of brands, those that are perceived to be very different are not necessarily perceived to be very salient. If you look at that correlation coefficient up there, it's less than 0.3. So the two aren't directly connected together. So let's define the 2 points. How are they different? Now, because of the great work of Ehrenberg Bass, this is a much easier definition for distinctiveness, making your brand easily identified by customers. To use the great Byron Sharp quote, a brand that looks like itself, and of course, coming to mind in buying situations, making our brand distinct, driving salience, supremely important, and thanks to Ehrenberg Bass, on the radar of many marketers now. How could we have missed this point? It's an extraordinarily important one. But let's not forget differentiation. Now, here's where we have to be a little smarter than Michael Porter. Let me tell you about my brother-in-law, Luke. My brother-in-law, Luke, is about 5'9". I'm about 6'2", yeah? But I'm taller than him, and that makes me different from him. It doesn't mean Luke doesn't have height. It doesn't mean I've invented height, and it's a unique thing that I have. It just means I have more of it than him. And if someone is looking for someone to work on a work site or hold scaffolding, my extra 3 inches could indeed be quite useful. The point is, that's relative differentiation. There's nothing unique here, but that doesn't preclude it being different. I'm different from Luke because I am taller. I haven't invented anything, but I'm still relatively different. So my definition, which ties in beautifully with Kantar's work, and that is a coincidence, we're working from different places, is that differentiation is ensuring your brand is perceived to be relatively different from alternatives on attributes and associations that matter to your target customers, and you can argue that's a lot of the meaningful dimension that Kantar talk about, enough to therefore influence purchase decisions. So how do you as a marketer achieve relative differentiation? We're here to help you in this session, not just to talk about things. Well, I would give you 3 pieces of advice. First, here's what you have to let go of. You have to let go of the idea of some kind of unique shit that's attached to your brand. You have to let go of the idea you can own a specific attribute that no one else gets anywhere near. But here's my key point. You have to get rid of complexity. Positioning in almost every company I've seen over the last 10 years is a joke. Yeah? It's become an end in itself. It's become 14 slides, 6 concepts, 24 words. It's bullshit. Yeah? Complexity will stop you achieving relative differentiation because you're trying to do too much across too many nonsensical concepts. And finally, multiplicity. If you follow the effectiveness literature, it is clear that you would position your brand to everyone in the market, and you would do so for the long of it without worrying about segments. When it gets to performance, there's a much better case for targeting and segmentation. But when it gets to positioning your brand and achieving relative differentiation, aim for everyone in the market, the sophisticated mass market that Ehrenberg Bass talk about. So what does it look like? Choose a concept for your position. Call it purpose. Call it brand positioning. Call it value prop. Call it magic moonbeams. It doesn't matter. But the minute you add more concepts like a child in a toy room, the thing falls apart through complexity. A tight attribute list. And when I'm saying tight, I'm not saying less than 25 things. My experience has shown me that I think you've got room for 2 or 3 attributes or associations where you might be able to achieve relative differentiation. They might be category entry points. They might be product attributes. They might be associations. Choose carefully, but the key word is choice. And use the 3 C's to pick out the ones that the customer wants, your company can deliver better than the competition. And therefore, differentiation really happens at the level of execution. Driven by a very tight sense of your positioning, execution becomes different. You're saying less things. You're saying them more often. You're saying them to everyone in the market. You're saying them across many different media. You're saying them with 60% of your budget, exactly as Field and Burnett would prescribe, or whatever the right proportion is for your category. You're saying them with better creative. You're saying them across more than advertising, because advertising is a relatively weak touch point. Everything from packaging to distribution to the way that the CEO does stuff needs to be aligned. And we're saying it for much longer. Wear out doesn't exist. We're pretty certain of that now. You're using the same campaign or the same campaign theme for a decade in order to get the point across. And my last point, I'm saying it with distinctiveness, because we live in a bothist world where you can have both. Distinctiveness and differentiation can work together. It isn't some duel of 2 enemies. Yeah. Instead, think of it more as a winning combination. Yeah. A famous duo. I'm sort of in this in a weird way, but you get my point, right? It's Morecambe and Wise. The 2 working together. Maybe one of them is more important than the other, but the 2 together work better than either of them on their own. Such things are possible. So my challenge to you as a marketer is a 1-page challenge. Get rid of your stupid brand position. Stop making positioning an end in itself. It's actually reducing your possibilities for relative differentiation. Have a singular concept. A tight 3 or 4 word attribute list that you choose to win on in terms of relative differentiation. Remember that word relative, though. You're not going to own it, but relative to your size, relative to your category, relative to your competitors, you're going to grow an unfair advantage in certain perceptions. These are the things that are important to your customer. And again, I can't reiterate this enough. You're not going to change them for a decade because it takes a decade for this shit to properly work. Now, at the same time, I'm also going to focus on my brand codes, distinctive brand assets, because if positioning drives differentiation, your brand codes drive your distinctiveness. The lessons, again, from Ehrenberg Bassett clear. You want a handful of them, logo plus 3. They should be, in this case, however, unique. And, using Jenny Romaniuk's famous grid, they should be ones that are famous, or at least famous for your brand. Again, you shouldn't change these, but after about 40 years, you get to play with them because effectiveness can happen that way, as McDonald's and Tiffany's will tell you. But it takes, in my experience, 40 years of reinforcing the codes before you can have the fun and the effectiveness of playing with them. And here's the key bit. On a single sheet of paper. Yeah. Without that, the minute we add more slides, it's not going to work. You're fucked. It's not going to happen. But the single page, doing less with focus and strategy as a choice, offers you an opportunity for relative differentiation. I would highlight KitKat as one of the most wonderful examples of getting the distinctiveness differentiation challenge 100% right. They've been saying the same shit for 40 years. It's a clarity on what the distinctive assets are of the brand, and it's a clarity of a very tight positioning that basically fundamentally comes down to we own taking a break. Yeah. There ain't nothing wrong with the lack of complexity there, the lack of other attributes. And they've been banging the same fucking drum for 50 years with more and more effectiveness. They say the same thing over and over again across the decades. And you know what? As meaning layers on top of meaning, as distinctiveness builds on top of distinctiveness, it only gets stronger. So let us stop this childish, silly, juvenile distinctiveness versus differentiation battle. Let us use the generosity of and let us be a little bit greedier for our brands. Both can be present. I even give you the point that they may not necessarily be equal. If I could average it out, I would probably see to Ehrenberg Bass that on average, maybe 60 or 70% of the challenge of branding is indeed distinctiveness and driving salience. It's that important, and their discoveries are that crucial. But that does not mean we need to get rid of differentiation. And I think those numbers and that balance will vary by category. And I think, thanks to the work of Kantar, we can also be clear that it seems to vary by brand age as well. Their data, again, I've learned a lot from this very lovely data set, that if you look at how brands begin, they typically index the ones that grow at the early stages with a lot of differentiation. But later on in their maturity cycle, what do you know? It becomes all about salience, pushing the growth prospects earlier. So how do brands grow? Differently, at different stages in a brand's age. The book, the Great Red Book, may not be perfect. So in summary, marketers overstated differentiation. They overstated how important it was. They overstated the uniqueness. They got carried away with themselves. And I think the USP stands in my list of all-time bullshit concepts at number 1, because it sent a generation of marketers in completely the wrong direction. But we're a fickle bunch. And so thanks to the influence of a couple of very good thinkers who did a big favor for the discipline by pointing out differentiation was horseshit, we ended up swinging our pendulum in exactly the opposite direction, all the way to distinctiveness and making differentiation some kind of theoretical enemy that doesn't exist. I want to encourage you to practice the act of bothism, the generosity of and, the idea that we can have both, yeah? We can have the cake, we can eat it as well, and it will make our brand stronger. The Kantar data teaches us this. Aim for relative differentiation. Make choices on the 2 or 3 things where you will be perceived to be relatively stronger to your consumers, and then hold true to those 2 or 3 North Stars. Ally it with distinctiveness. There's nothing to stop you, like KitKat, from being very clear on we stand for taking a break, and we have red, we have the bars, we have the break, and we have clear distinctive assets. Together, you have a more powerful approach. I've given the Ehrenberg Bass Institute a shit ton of pain in these 30 minutes. Let me be very clear. Professor Byron Sharp remains our greatest thinker of the last 50 years. The Ehrenberg Bass Institute has done more for marketing than everybody else pretty much put together. But they're occasionally wrong. Science is all about proving someone is not quite right. I've just done it. It's okay. Let's progress forward. Let's accept that. Let's appreciate them. But also let's appreciate that sometimes we go off too far in one direction. And let's also celebrate the tenacity of Kantar. Throughout this 10 years where everyone's been shitting on differentiation, Kantar had the guts to continue to measure and promote these concepts of meaningful differentiation. And they deserve a shit ton of credit because that was a brave thing to do when every client was parroting out the idea that differentiation wasn't even possible, never mind valuable. Anyway, now the weekend weather.
I'm sure this movie should have gone with some, come with some rating that we forgot to mention. Hey, guys. Good morning, everybody. So, Mark is a tough act to follow, but Graham and Mark have given us some great insights into that key growth driver and how important it is for your strategic planning and your sustainable brand growth. But how do we put all of this into action? It's all well and fine. So next, myself, Nandi and Moshin are going to take you through the 3 growth accelerators and give you some hints and tips and examples. And I have the power. So first, let's talk about predisposing more people. That is our first growth driver. And what I want to start off by saying is that predisposition is not the same as loyalty. In fact, lots of data sources, including Kantar, have by now proven that brand loyalty doesn't really exist. Instead, consumers choose from a set of brands. But what you can do is you can create the sense that your brand is the right choice from that set of brands. And you can give your brand a head start. And that is predisposition. So Graham talked about this massive data set that they analyzed, and Kantar has actually now shown with that data set that brands that people are strongly predisposed to have 9 times higher volume share. They can command double the price, and they are 4 times more likely to grow their value share in future than brands with weaker predisposition. There are 2 ways in which you can predispose more people. You can predispose people to choose you or to buy you, and you can predispose people to pay your asking price. That is the price that you need. Think about your own buying behavior. You will consider some brands, but not some others, and you will not always choose the cheapest brand in every category. So how do we get people to pay more for our brand than another brand in the category? So first, let's look at predisposition to choose. How do we create this predisposition to choose? At Kantar, we can measure the extent to which brands create a predisposition to choose, and we measure it through demand power. So demand power is how meaningfully different your brand is and how quickly it comes to mind. And Kantar has shown that brands with high demand power have higher brand value than brands with low demand power. And we can yet again see that reflected in this year's ranking, that little dark corner over there. So you can see that the brands with high demand power are worth more than the brands with lower demand power. The interesting thing is that even strong brands with high demand power will decline when times are tough, but they will decline slower and they will recover more quickly. It's not zitting. There we go. Did I break it, Ivan? Yes. Well, that's what you pay me for. So how do you build this? Moshin, everybody. Do you need some water, Moshin? You're good. So, by the way, guys, that was unscripted, hey? Unlike Ivan's. Shh. Okay, so how do you build this demand power? How do you predispose more people to choose you? Mental availability or salience has by now been long established as a key growth driver. But it's not just coming to mind that counts, it is what comes to mind. And you as marketers have an opportunity to shape associations with your brand through experiences and exposures. So for experiences, the key is that you need to create a meaningful experience. Now, I feel bad to say this, that can be uniquely associated with your brand. And for exposures, you need to invest in quality creative at all of those numerous touch points that Mark referred to that will result in memorable advertising. So the brand with the best exposure and the most memorable advertising this year is Savannah. Whew. My clicker is very, very sensitive. Okay, so we were talking about these starting grids earlier. Graham was talking about the starting grids. And to assess whether we are, in fact, predisposing people to choose, we can map meaningful difference. I can't move my... no, there, yes, there we are. Huh, there we go. Okay, so we map how meaningfully different our brand is against brand salience. And what we want to ask ourselves is salience limiting our ability to predispose more people? So if we've got good, meaningful difference, is that salience limiting our ability to reach people and to influence them? As you can see, Savannah is a highly meaningful, different brand. You would have seen so on Graham's slides as well. So Savannah has invested in all of their impactful advertising to amplify that meaningful difference and to come to mind quickly and easily. Savannah's investment in great advertising also extends to brand partnerships, as we've seen with Old Chucky here, and Nando's. And they have consistently, I think the key here is you saw 40 years before you start tinkering, they've consistently invested in iconic comedians in all of their creative over time to reinforce this positioning of dry humor, the single-minded idea. And over time, this has led to a close association with being a disruptive brand that leads the way. So let's have a look next at predisposing more people to pay the right price. And the key question here is, do people prefer your brand so much over others that they are willing to pay the price that you need? Kantar has demonstrated that people's attitudes to a brand influence the price they are willing to pay. We call this pricing power. And from the most recent BrandZ data, we've seen that even struggling South Africans are prepared to pay up to double for a brand that they deem worth it. And those would be in the top 3 boxes that you see behind me. The brands in the middle row sufficiently justify the price they charge against the category average, but the brands in the bottom 3 boxes struggle to show that they are worth it, irrespective of whether they are cheap or expensive. It's really interesting that in South Africa, people are more likely to view brands as overpriced. And you can see here, compared to our global number, a disproportionate number of brands are viewed as overpriced in South Africa. And this reflects South Africans' changing needs and perceptions as our budgets become under pressure. So what that means for us as brands is that we have to work so much harder to prove that we are worth it. Nearly half of the brands in the top 30 have strong pricing power, and they do an excellent job to show that they are worth it. On the top left, you can see Outsurance, Capitec, and Mr. Price. They are perceived as offering lower prices, but they back that up with great equity that makes them worth more than they cost in consumers' view. Then on the other side, we've got Woolies, Discovery, Clicks, MTN, Savannah, and Checkers. They are viewed as expensive brands, but justifiably so. So it's interesting that Clicks and Checkers moved up in terms of being viewed as expensive this year, but they are still seen as worth it. And then we have brands like Takealot and Brutal Fruit sitting in that middle area, the margin opportunity side, and there they're seen as aspirational, but still accessible. And the brand that has been the most successful at demonstrating great value this year is Outsurance. There we go. Outsurance's incentive program, the Out Bonus, was the first of its kind in the insurance category. And many competitors have since replicated this. Nearly everybody offers something to that effect these days. But Outsurance has over time become synonymous with that value promise that you always get something out. And what they've recently done is that they've extended that from a purely functional price promise to an emotional connection with their consumers by telling us how their pointsmen make our lives easier and we all get something out in traffic. Honestly, guys, I'm from Cape Town. I didn't realize how bad it was here. This morning we came through two intersections where the pointsmen were on duty. So they really give you a sense of getting worth your money and extending that to everybody else to give everybody something out. And they have seen an increase in their index score for worth more than what they cost from 106 last year to 122 points this year. So well done, Outsurance. And next I'm handing over to Nandi.
Thank you, Stina. I'm going to put this down, sorry. Hello. So let's talk about how can brands convert that predisposition into actual sales. To create sales, brands need to be easy to mind and easy to find. So predisposition and presence work together. They are interdependent, and they must work together synergistically to multiply into sales. So that's basically just me saying a fancier version of what Mark said, that attitudes and purchase really do go together. So brands really must make it frictionless for consumers to go from predisposition to actually finding what they want. Be More Present is really all about optimizing marketing investments in distribution, in your product range, in packaging, in pricing, and promotion. And this is to ensure you have the right availability and visibility to convert predisposition and capture consumer choices. Not only for your brand, but from other brands as well. So what we have found is that brands that are always present attract 7 times more buyers compared to those who are less so. So as the landscape becomes more diverse, brands must actively ensure they are present where consumer choices are being made. So being more present can take many forms. And Kantar has identified 4 broad levers that strengthen activation and maximum sales. The first one is availability. So this is more than just physical presence. Make sure you optimize your brand's availability across physical and digital touchpoints to ensure it meets consumers wherever they are. A brand that does this really well is Takealot. From the use of local or community drivers in their distribution network, to offering personal shopper assistance to township customers, really shows that their commitment to ensuring availability and presence in all areas of South Africa. And the next lever is prominence. So this is all about being visible, and it's very important. You can boost your brand's visibility through distinctive assets and strategic placements to ensure it catches the eye, but also stays top of mind. When a brand does this successfully, it triggers mental connections in the mind of consumers to remind them of the predisposition that they have for your brand. I'm sure most of us are familiar with the brand Temu, or Temu, I never know how to say it. This brand's aggressive form of advertising, their gamified shopping experience, and their annoyingly catchy Shop Like a Billionaire song has truly caught the world's attention. Shana. Okay, and then product range. So relevance is really about making sure you have the right range. So you must ensure that you adapt product offerings that have the right variations and packs and sizes and technological interfaces. Maize is a great example of this. Leading brands in maize have maintained relevance through more formats, pack sizes, and variants. A category that has gone from just being mini-meal to ready to eat, and now to baby nutrition. Lastly, your pricing. Your pricing strategy needs to capture the full equity of your brand. To attract a wide range of customers, ensure you strategically set prices that balance market competitiveness with perceived value. Most categories now offer some variation of monthly deals. And although price promotions are a good way to demonstrate value, you must use them cautiously to avoid habituating consumers to lower prices. Okay, so a brand that really exemplifies capturing market share excellently is Capitec. Since it started, Capitec has been the ultimate disruptor. It has changed the banking landscape and continues to do so. Over the past 20 years, this brand has grown from 25,000 to over 15 million customers. They continue to invest significantly in both online and offline presence to make their consumers' lives easier. They also continue to create presence and visibility by opening more branches in times where their competitors were actually closing theirs. Their standout brand attributes, remind people about the brand. For example, when making a purchase, the distinctive sound of the Capitec jingle is incorporated into their point of sale machine. So when the transaction is complete, it actually plays. And who among us hasn't received a picture of somebody's Capitec bank card when you need to make a payment to a Capitec customer. So all of these distinctive assets really help the brand stand out and stay top of mind. Capitec is more successful at converting predisposition into usage because of its role in pioneering access to affordable banking and other financial services, especially those customers with a lower range of incomes and needs. So really, well done to Capitec. And that's really it for me. I will now hand over to Moshin to talk about how brands can find new space and continue to grow.
Okay, so I just have to check my mic is on now. Yeah. Thank you, Nandi. And a very good morning to you, everyone. So I'm going to be taking us through the third growth accelerator within the Blueprint framework, Find New Space. Find New Space is all about finding the most incremental space, be it motivations, occasions, categories, or services that a brand can stretch into. We have found that brands that stretch into more incremental usage and consumption occasions have double the chance of growth versus those who do not. A brand can win in a new space in multiple ways, such as through meaningfully different innovation, expanded distribution, and communications. For example, in terms of innovation, think of travel apps offering to book location experiences, or perhaps a garden center offering services around plant care, or a beer brand offering low-carb, zero-alcohol options. The best brand for finding new space is, anyone want to take a guess? Vodacom. Huge congratulations to Vodacom. So the key question we address here is, where might you best find future growth for your brand? Here we plot penetration on one axis to review the size and maturity of a brand and contrast it with the momentum a brand has using future power on the other axis. Future power is an indicator driven mainly by excess meaningful difference that predicts growth in the next 12 months. Big brands with limited future power sitting at the bottom really need to reinvigorate their core reconnecting to the consumer and become more meaningful. They could use their positioning as a big brand to set the trend for the category and enhance differentiation. Those with lower penetration but strong potential for future growth, sitting in the top left, would be better off at converting momentum in the category and reaching more category buyers. Expanding the range might not be the best course at this stage. Instead, finding ways to double down, stand out, and disrupt will be paramount. Brands in the top right have future growth potential based on their excess future demand, and they need to ask themselves some big questions that expand their horizons. For example, what business are they in? What's happening in the category today, and where do adjacent ones begin? What pain points or workarounds exist today that could be breakthrough innovation tomorrow? And this is what Vodacom has been doing. Let's look at a few examples. In no particular order, geography. Seen through its acquiring of a majority shareholding in the Egyptian entity, giving the business both exposure and access to an attractive market, as well as a set of new growth possibilities for the group's portfolio across Africa. Product diversification. Seen through its offering of telecoms and fixed connectivity to financial and insurance products and services across both consumer and business segments. For example, within the business segment, this can be seen through its offering of point-of-sale devices, funding solutions, employee life and funeral cover, wait for it, one more, business legal cover. And that's just not it. And then investing in social sustainability to widen digital and financial inclusivity. Other examples here include supporting job seekers through affordable connectivity to job platforms, as well as free access to digital training courses. And last but not least, empowering communities through critical sector services across healthcare, education, and agriculture. For example, within agriculture, this can be seen through its smart farming product offerings. So 3 key things for us to think about to find new space. Number 1, challenge the definition of the category you are in. Look within and beyond. Most category definitions are product-based, meaning brands fail to understand the emerging needs and occasions they could serve and are unaware of alternate solutions people use to satisfy their needs today. Knowing which demand moments exist and their anticipated future growth will help you find new space. Secondly, understand the importance of your category context in informing your growth strategy. Immature categories allow your brand to benefit from category penetration increases as well as the development of new habits, whereas mature categories have reached their potential and habits fully formed. So leading brands within a mature category must find new space to maintain growth. And thirdly, understand the importance of your brand size. Small brands need to disrupt default buying behaviors to steal existing category buyers from bigger brands, whereas bigger brands must break boundaries, push the definition of their category, spot future needs, and step up to address them. And that's it from me today. Thank you for your time. I will now hand back to Ivan.
Moshin, Eddie Murphy, XL Foley, Vali. That was a funny laugh. Anyways. Oh man, that was funny. That was funny. Yeah. Now I've even lost my train of thought because I'm thinking of your laugh. Anyway, guys, there's actually a wrap from us. But wait, there's more. As they say in informations, if you buy this iron, we'll throw in a toilet seat. Anyway, I think if there's one thing you have to take away from today is to download these tools that you can get from these QR codes. Even if you can't, we'll definitely send you the list. Each of them, trust me, are some of the most leading, amazing way in terms of growing your brand. The first one is going to be everything that you've heard today about the business reports of Kantar BrandZ, most valuable African brands. You'll get all the analysis that you see and all the insights that you need. The second one, as I said earlier on, is arguably the must-do way guide of how to grow your brand, literally called Blueprint for Brand Growth, which is amazing. And then last but not least is Brand Snapshot. Now, this is a free tool that you can use. You just have to register, download it, and you can take your brand and look at different attributes in terms of where it's strong and how it competes with the competitors. So do take them. As I said, we will email them to you and you'll find amazing treasure trove of stuff. Thanks again for joining us. Now, what we are going to do, you remember that moment that we told the winners that they must hang on? I think their knuckles are all white because they've been just hanging on to those things. We are going to call them one by all of them, the special winners and the top 3. We'll take it from there. And after that, you can start and they'll come in for some photo ops and you can take all your cell phones out and take the pics and all the stuff. So now, I'm not moving the slides. Now, the slides will be moved by Moshin, right? Now, Moshin, I know you're going to be as smooth as your love, buddy. So,